The sun had begun its slow descent behind the distant hills, painting the sky in soft shades of orange and pink. The woman walked along the dusty road, each step heavier than the last. Her shoes were worn and dusty, and her clothes had seen better days. She had been traveling for days, maybe even weeks. She had lost track of time. Each morning had started with the hope that something better awaited her. But each night had brought only loneliness and fear. Her heart ached, and her body felt weak, but she could not stop. She could not give up. Not yet. Her mind was full of memories she tried to forget. She remembered the home she had once known, filled with laughter and warmth. But that life had ended suddenly, leaving her alone. Family and friends who had promised to stay had disappeared one by one, leaving only empty words and broken promises. Money had run out long ago, and she had survived on whatever she could find along the way. The world seemed cruel and unforgiving, but she had learned to keep moving. To stop was to lose. As she walked, she thought about the nights she had spent sleeping under the stars, wrapped in a thin blanket that barely kept her warm. She remembered the hunger in her stomach, the cold that seeped into her bones, and the moments when she had wondered if anyone would ever care. Tears had come often, but she had learned to wipe them away quickly. Crying did not bring help, and it certainly did not bring food or safety. She learned to hide her pain, to look strong even when she felt fragile. The road stretched endlessly before her. It was quiet, except for the occasional rustle of the wind through the dry grass. She felt like a ghost walking through the world, unnoticed and forgotten. She had been passing through small towns, hoping to find someone kind, someone willing to offer a smile, or at least a little help. Most people were busy with their own lives, too busy to notice a stranger in need. Some had been cold, some indifferent, and a few had been cruel. Each encounter left a mark, a reminder that trust was dangerous and that the world could be harsh. Her thoughts were interrupted by a sudden sound, a soft creak from nearby. She turned her head, eyes scanning the horizon. A figure appeared in the distance, riding a horse slowly along the same path. He was tall, wearing a wide-brimmed hat that shaded most of his face. She could not tell if he was a threat or a friend. Her heart pounded in her chest. Every instinct she had told her to be careful, to step off the road and hide. But curiosity nudged her forward. The man stopped a short distance away, letting his horse graze on a patch of grass. He did not speak immediately. He simply watched her with calm, steady eyes. There was something different about him, something that made her pause. Most people she had met in recent months had ignored her, or worse, treated her with suspicion. But this man did not seem to judge. He did not seem to expect anything from her. He simply existed, quietly observing. She felt a strange mix of fear and relief. Part of her wanted to run, to disappear into the shadows, but another part of her longed for connection, even if it was only for a moment. The wind shifted, carrying the faint scent of leather and earth. The man tilted his head slightly, as if encouraging her to approach. His horse stamped its hoof softly, but otherwise, everything remained calm. Taking a deep breath, she continued along the path, trying to appear confident even though every step felt uncertain. She kept her eyes forward, pretending not to notice him, but she could feel his gaze following her, patient and unwavering. She wondered why he had stopped for her. Why would a stranger, a cowboy she had never seen before, care enough to watch her? It was a question she had not dared to ask anyone for a long time. People did not care. She reminded herself. People only cared about themselves. Her thoughts wandered back to her past. She remembered the life she had lost, the people who had let her down, and the moments when she had felt truly alone. Those memories were painful, but they were also a part of her. They had shaped her into the person she had become: strong, cautious, and determined to survive. She had learned to rely on herself, to keep moving no matter how tired or scared she felt. And yet, there was a small part of her, a quiet corner of her heart, that longed for kindness, for someone to simply say, "You are not alone." The cowboy finally spoke, his voice low and steady, but not harsh. It was calm, with a hint of warmth she had not heard in a long time. "Are you all right?" he asked. Just 5 words. 5 words that seemed to carry more meaning than 1,000 sentences. She froze, caught off guard. No one had asked her that in months, maybe years. Most people had ignored her, or turned away, or judged her. But he had asked. For a moment, she did not answer. Her throat felt tight, and tears threatened to spill. She wanted to tell him everything, to pour out her heart and let someone see the real her, the woman behind the fear and exhaustion. But she did not. She could not. Not yet. Instead, she nodded slowly, barely audible. I'm fine," she said, her voice shaking. He nodded back, as if he understood. There was no pressure, no expectation. He did not push for more. But he did not walk away either. He simply stayed there, a silent presence that felt strangely comforting. She realized, almost reluctantly, that she had not felt this calm in a long time. His presence was steady, reassuring, like a rock in the middle of a turbulent river. They walked together along the path, side by side but not speaking much. The silence was not uncomfortable. It felt natural, almost necessary. She noticed small things about him, the way he carried himself, the care he took with his horse, the quiet strength in his movements. He did not need to impress anyone, did not need to show off. He simply was. And somehow, that was enough. As the evening deepened, the sky darkened, and the first stars began to appear. She realized how exhausted she truly was. Her body ached, and her stomach growled faintly. She had not eaten a proper meal in days, but for the first time in a long while, she felt a spark of hope. Perhaps this stranger, this quiet cowboy, could be more than just a passerby. Perhaps he could offer something she had not known she needed. A small measure of trust, a sense of safety, and maybe even kindness. By the time the sun had completely disappeared, they reached a small clearing near a stream. The cowboy dismounted, tending to his horse carefully. He offered her a spot near the fire he started, and she hesitated only briefly before sitting down. The warmth of the flames was comforting, but it was his quiet presence that was truly reassuring. She felt, for the first time in a long time, that someone was truly seeing her, not judging her, not expecting anything from her, simply seeing her. That night, as she watched the fire flicker, she realized something important. Life had been harsh, and people had been cruel, but there were still moments of light, still moments where kindness could reach her. She did not know what the future held, or whether this cowboy would remain a part of her life. But for the first time in a long while, she allowed herself to hope. Hope, she realized, could be as powerful as fear, and maybe even stronger. And so, under the stars, by the warmth of the fire, a fragile trust began to grow. She did not yet know the journey ahead, or the challenges she would face. But for the first time in months, she felt that she was not completely alone. The road was still long, the nights still cold, and the world still uncertain, but tonight, she had found a small piece of light in the darkness. The next morning, the sun rose slowly over the hills, casting a golden light across the quiet landscape. The woman woke up to the soft sounds of birds chirping and the gentle movement of the cowboy tending to his horse nearby. She felt a strange mix of curiosity and caution. She had spent so many days alone that being around someone else felt both comforting and unsettling at the same time. The cowboy noticed her stirring and offered a small, calm smile. "Did you sleep well?" he asked, his voice as steady as it had been the evening before. She hesitated, unsure how to answer. Sleep had been interrupted by dreams, memories, and fears. Yet it had been the first night in a long time that she had felt safe. "As well as I could," she said softly. Her voice carried a weight of honesty she hadn't shown anyone in a long time. He nodded as if he understood exactly what she meant. There was no need for explanations. Sometimes, words were not enough. and silence spoke louder. He handed her a small piece of bread and some fresh water. Simple gestures that carried unexpected warmth. She accepted them cautiously, unsure if she should trust that someone could care so freely. Yet, as she ate, she realized she hadn't tasted something so comforting in weeks. It wasn't just the food. It was the kindness that came with it. For a long time, they walked along the path, the woman's steps now lighter than the previous day. The cowboy kept a careful distance, allowing her space but never leaving her entirely alone. He said little, but when he did speak, his words were simple and thoughtful. They discussed small things, the weather, the land, and the journey. These conversations were not filled with pretension or forced cheer. They were natural and calm, allowing the woman to feel a connection without pressure. She found herself noticing him more, the way he moved, quietly but with purpose. The gentle way he treated his horse, and the way he seemed to notice details others overlooked. He wasn't loud or flashy, and yet there was a strength about him, quiet but undeniable. It was the kind of strength that made someone feel protected, even without grand gestures. She had met many people in her life, but none had made her feel this kind of safety before. The woman's mind wandered back to her past as they walked. She remembered the people who had hurt her, the friends who had betrayed her trust, and the moments when she had felt completely alone. She had learned to keep her walls high, to hide her feelings, and to move carefully through the world. But with the cowboy, her walls seemed to soften just slightly. Perhaps it was the simplicity of his words, the way he didn't demand anything, or the fact that he seemed genuinely interested in her well-being. At one point, they came across a small stream, clear and sparkling under the morning sun. The cowboy knelt down, filling a small canteen with water, and offered it to her. "Here," he said, "drink. You'll need your strength." The gesture was small, ordinary even, yet it carried more meaning than words could express. She drank, feeling the cool water soothe her parched throat. For the first time in days, she felt nourished, not just physically, but emotionally. As the day progressed, the conversation grew deeper, though still gentle. He asked her about her journey, but not in a way that felt prying. He seemed genuinely curious, not judgmental. She found herself sharing small pieces of her story, bits and pieces of her struggles and fears. Each word was carefully chosen, and yet she felt a strange relief in speaking them aloud. It had been so long since someone had listened without interruption or criticism. He listened patiently, nodding when appropriate, never pushing, never questioning her pain. In the afternoon, they found a quiet spot under the shade of a large tree. The cowboy spread out a simple cloth, offering a place to rest. The woman sat down, letting out a sigh she hadn't realized she had been holding in. She felt her shoulders relax for the first time in weeks. The cowboy sat nearby, tending to his horse but keeping an eye on her. There was an unspoken understanding between them, no need for grand words or gestures. Presence alone, quiet and steady, was enough. The woman began to notice other small details about the cowboy. The way he laughed quietly at his own thoughts, the way his hands moved with experience and care, and the calm patience that seemed to radiate from him. She realized that for the first time in a long while, she felt safe, not because someone had promised protection, but because she could see it in the way he acted. His kindness was consistent, quiet, and sincere. As the afternoon turned to evening, the sky painted itself in shades of gold and purple. The woman felt a strange flutter of emotions she could not fully understand. She had spent so long alone, guarding her heart, that feeling something gentle and warm was unfamiliar. She wondered if she was imagining it, if she was reading too much into his actions. But deep down, she knew it was real. For the first time, she felt that maybe trust could exist again. That evening, the cowboy spoke 5 words that would linger in her mind long after they were spoken. "You are not alone." They were simple, yet profound. Nothing had been promised, no obligations had been placed upon her, and yet the words carried more comfort than she had felt in years. She felt a lump rise in her throat, tears threatening to fall. It was not just what he said, but how he said it, steady, sincere, without expectation. She wanted to speak, to tell him that she had never heard such words with such honesty before. But she did not. She simply nodded, letting the moment settle between them. Those 5 words became a lifeline, a small spark of hope in a life that had known too much darkness. For the first time, she allowed herself to believe that maybe things could be different. Maybe someone could care without asking for anything in return. The night came, and they made camp near the stream. The cowboy started a small fire, and she watched as the flames danced and flickered, casting shadows on the ground. The warmth of the fire was comforting, but it was the calm presence of the cowboy that made her heart feel lighter. They did not speak much after the sun went down, but silence was no longer uncomfortable. It was peaceful, a quiet companionship that she had long forgotten existed. She reflected on the day, thinking about how far she had come. She had walked for hours, shared small conversations, and even allowed herself to rest. And yet, the most important part of the day had been the simple words he had spoken. The words that reminded her she was not invisible, not forgotten. For so long, she had felt like she was wandering through the world alone. But now she realized that connection could exist, even in the smallest gestures. As she lay down to sleep that night, she felt a cautious optimism. She did not know what tomorrow would bring, or whether this cowboy would continue to be a part of her journey. But for the first time in a long while, she felt that someone truly saw her. And sometimes, seeing someone for who they truly are is the first step toward healing, toward trust, and toward hope. The stars shone brightly above them, reflecting in the quiet waters of the stream. The woman felt a sense of calm she had not experienced in years. She was still carrying her past, her fears, and her wounds. But tonight, for the first time in a long time, those burdens felt lighter. She had found a small measure of kindness, a quiet strength, and a reminder that even in a world that could be harsh, there was still hope. In the days that followed, this simple connection would grow. The woman would learn to trust again, slowly and carefully. But she would remember that moment, the moment when 5 simple words changed everything. You are not alone. It was more than words. It was a promise, a lifeline, and a reminder that sometimes the smallest gestures could carry the greatest weight. And so, under the open sky, beside a calm stream, and with a quiet cowboy who had spoken the words she had longed to hear, the woman began a journey not just of survival, but of hope, trust, and the possibility of a brighter future. The days passed quietly, but steadily, as the woman and the cowboy continued their journey together. Each day brought small moments that, while ordinary to an observer, carried extraordinary meaning for her. The simple acts of companionship, the shared meals, the quiet walks along dusty trails, and the gentle conversations under the open sky slowly began to chip away at the walls she had built around her heart. At first, she remained cautious. Trust did not come easily. She had spent so long relying only on herself that the idea of depending on someone else felt foreign. Her mind constantly warned her to be careful, to be alert, to never let anyone close enough to hurt her. But the cowboy's presence was steady, predictable, and without judgment. He never demanded explanations, never questioned her choices, and never tried to control her. That consistency began to feel like a safe harbor in the storm of her life. They often traveled through open fields, where the wind blew freely, carrying the scents of earth, grass, and distant flowers. The woman found herself noticing things she hadn't noticed before. Birds weaving through the sky, sunlight glinting on a river, and the gentle rustling of leaves in the trees. The world, which had felt harsh and indifferent, now seemed a little softer, a little more alive. She realized that she had been so focused on survival that she had forgotten to truly see the world around her. The cowboy never pushed her to speak, but he had a way of asking questions that invited her to share her thoughts. He asked about her favorite memories, what she hoped for, and what made her laugh. At first, she gave short, guarded answers, but slowly, she began to open up, offering small pieces of herself that she had long kept hidden. Every story she shared, every thought she voiced, was met with patience and understanding. She began to feel that she was not only heard, but valued. One afternoon, they came across a small village. The woman was hesitant to enter at first, fearing the judgment and indifference of strangers. But the cowboy offered a gentle reassurance. "We'll go together," he said simply, and that was enough. In the village, they found a place to rest, eat, and tend to their horses. The woman marveled at how different it felt to have someone by her side. Someone who could silently provide support without expecting anything in return. As they spent time together, the woman began to notice subtle details about the cowboy that revealed the depth of his character. He treated everyone he met with respect, from shopkeepers to strangers passing by. He was patient, not just with her, but with the world around him. His actions were small, but they spoke volumes, helping an elderly man carry supplies, sharing water with a tired traveler, or simply offering a kind word to someone who seemed downhearted. She realized that his kindness was genuine, and that realization made it easier for her to trust him. Nighttime became a special part of their days. After long hours of walking and working, they would set up camp under the stars. The woman found herself looking forward to these quiet moments more than anything else. Sitting by the fire, she felt a warmth that had nothing to do with the flames. She could talk when she wanted, or simply sit in silence, knowing that he would be there, watching over her without intruding. That kind of presence, steady and unwavering, was something she had never experienced before. Over time, she began to notice changes within herself. She laughed more easily, smiled more freely, and felt a sense of calm she hadn't known in years. Old fears and doubts still lingered, but they were no longer overwhelming. She had learned to find strength not just in solitude but in connection. Trust, she realized, was not a weakness, it was a bridge to hope, to healing, and to the possibility of something better. One day, as they rested by a stream, she decided to ask a question she had been holding back. "Why are you helping me?" she asked, her voice soft but sincere. The cowboy looked at her, his expression calm and thoughtful. "Because you needed someone," he said simply. "And because I could." His answer was not complicated, but it carried more weight than any lengthy explanation could have. It reminded her that sometimes kindness existed for its own sake, without hidden motives or expectations. The woman reflected on her past, thinking about the people who had let her down, the betrayals she had endured, and the loneliness that had defined much of her life. She realized that while she could not change the past, she could choose how to respond to the present. The cowboy had offered her a chance to see the world differently, to believe in human goodness again. And for the first time in years, she allowed herself to embrace that possibility. Their journey was not without challenges. They encountered rough terrain, sudden storms, and moments when supplies ran low. But facing these difficulties together strengthened their bond. The woman learned that she could rely on someone without feeling weak or dependent. She discovered that strength came not only from self-reliance, but also from allowing another person to stand beside you, offering support when it was needed most. Through these experiences, the woman began to heal. The fear that had governed her life slowly loosened its grip. She learned to smile without reservation, to speak her thoughts without fear of judgment, and to find joy in small, everyday moments. She began to understand that trust and compassion were not signs of weakness, but of courage. And she realized that the cowboy's quiet presence had given her more than safety, it had given her hope. Even in moments of silence, there was understanding. The woman realized that connection was not always about words. It was about presence, actions, and shared experiences. Sitting together by a campfire, walking side by side along a dusty trail, or simply observing the sunset, she felt a sense of belonging that she had long thought impossible. The cowboy's kindness was not flashy or dramatic, but it was consistent and real, and that consistency allowed her heart to open, slowly and carefully. As the days turned into weeks, the woman reflected on how much she had changed. She no longer felt like a stranger in the world, constantly on the run from fear and uncertainty. She had learned to trust, to care, and to hope again. The cowboy had shown her that even in a world that could be harsh, there were people who could offer genuine kindness without expecting anything in return. And in that realization, she found a new sense of strength. By the time they reached another small settlement, she felt a quiet confidence she had not known before. She could walk through the village without fear, speak to strangers without anxiety, and even laugh at small jokes or stories. The transformation was subtle, yet profound. She had been given something invaluable, not just protection, but the knowledge that she could survive, thrive, and even find happiness again. That evening, as they set up camp by a gentle stream, she thought about the journey ahead. She did not know what the future held, or how long she would remain on the road with the cowboy, but she knew that the trust and hope she had found would remain with her. She had learned that connection, kindness, and understanding were powerful forces, capable of healing wounds that had seemed permanent. The woman looked at the cowboy, her heart full of gratitude. She realized that the journey they had shared had taught her more than survival. It had taught her the value of trust, compassion, and quiet strength. She knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, she had the courage to face them, and she would not face them alone. As night fell, the stars reflected in the stream, and the gentle sounds of the countryside surrounded them. The woman felt a sense of peace she had not known in years. She had been desperate and alone, but now she had someone by her side who offered not only safety but understanding. And in that understanding, she discovered the possibility of a life filled with hope, trust, and perhaps even joy. The days ahead would bring challenges, no doubt. But for the first time, she felt ready to face them not with fear, but with confidence, and the quiet knowledge that kindness and trust could change everything. She had learned that even the smallest gestures could leave a lasting impact, and that the courage to trust could lead to healing and growth. And so, as they settled in for the night, the woman reflected on her journey. She had come far, not just in distance, but in spirit. She had begun to trust, to hope, and to believe that a brighter future was possible. And she knew that with the cowboy by her side, she could face whatever lay ahead, confident in the knowledge that she was no longer alone. The sun rose slowly, painting the sky with soft hues of gold and pink. The woman stirred, stretching her arms as she awoke, feeling the warmth of the early morning sun on her face. For the first time in many weeks, she felt a sense of calm and safety. She had traveled far, faced challenges that tested her body and spirit, and endured loneliness that had once seemed endless. Yet here she was, not alone, and for the first time in a long while, hope felt real. The cowboy was already awake, tending to his horse with practiced ease. She watched him quietly, noticing the calm confidence in his movements, the patience in his eyes, and the quiet strength that seemed to surround him. It was not a strength born from aggression or dominance, but from a steady kindness and reliability that was rare and comforting. She realized she had come to rely on that strength not just for safety, but as a steady presence that allowed her to breathe more easily. As they prepared for the day, she reflected on how far she had come. She remembered the despair she had felt when she first met him, the fear, the isolation, and the uncertainty about the future. It had seemed as though the world had turned its back on her, leaving her to wander aimlessly with only her fears for company. Yet now, after days of quiet support, shared hardships, and small gestures of kindness, she felt stronger. She had begun to heal in ways she hadn't thought possible, learning that trust, patience, and gentle connection could transform even the most lonely heart. They set out along the dusty trail, the sun warming the landscape, and the gentle breeze carrying the scents of wildflowers and fresh grass. The woman walked beside him, her steps lighter than they had been for weeks. The journey was not easy. There were rocky paths, uneven terrain, and moments when their provisions ran low, but these difficulties felt different now. She faced them not with fear, but with a quiet confidence, bolstered by the knowledge that someone reliable was walking beside her. Throughout the day, the cowboy spoke sparingly, but his words were meaningful. He offered encouragement when needed, guidance when necessary, and always, a steady presence that reminded her she was no longer alone. The woman began to notice the small things, how he observed the environment, anticipated problems, and handled every challenge with calm and care. There was no pretense, no need to impress. Everything he did was practical, thoughtful, and consistent. Watching him, she realized that strength and kindness could coexist, and that true courage was often quiet and unassuming. As they stopped near a small, tranquil river to rest, she dipped her hands into the cool water, feeling its freshness against her skin. She noticed how the sunlight danced across the surface, and for a moment, she allowed herself to simply enjoy the beauty around her. For so long, she had been focused solely on survival, never pausing to appreciate the small joys of life. Yet now, with the cowboy nearby, she could breathe, reflect, and even smile without guilt or fear. It was a new kind of freedom, one she had not felt in years. Sitting by the river, she began to open her heart further. She shared stories from her past, both the joyful memories she had kept tucked away and the painful experiences that had shaped her. The cowboy listened without interruption, without judgment, and without pushing her to say more than she was ready to share. It was the first time in her life that someone had truly heard her. Not just the words she spoke, but the emotions behind them. Every detail, every pause, and every hesitation was met with patience and understanding. In the evening, as the sun dipped toward the horizon, casting the world in shades of orange and purple, they made camp near a grove of trees. The woman watched him as he started a fire, noting the calm precision of his movements. He worked quietly, and yet the simplicity of his actions brought a sense of reassurance she had never experienced before. When he offered her a place near the fire, she accepted without hesitation. For the first time in months, she felt entirely safe, and she realized that safety was not only about protection from danger, but also about being seen, understood, and valued. They shared a simple meal, the flavors of the food enhanced by the warmth of the fire, and the quiet comfort of companionship. The woman realized that she had not shared a meal in this way for a long time, not just eating to survive, but eating in a space where she felt cared for and at peace. The cowboy did not ask for explanations or personal details. He simply shared the moment with her, offering his attention, presence, and kindness. It was in these small acts that trust deepened, slowly but surely, and she began to feel a connection that went beyond mere survival. As darkness settled over the land, the stars emerged, twinkling in the clear night sky. The woman lay back on a soft blanket, her gaze fixed on the constellations above. For the first time, she felt a sense of belonging, a quiet understanding that life could still hold beauty, hope, and trust. Even after so much pain, the cowboy's presence beside her was steady, silent, and reassuring. A reminder that she did not have to face the world alone. She reflected on the journey they had shared. From the moment they had met, he had offered her a simple yet profound gift: the knowledge that she was not alone. Those 5 words, "You are not alone," had changed everything. They had sparked a journey of trust, healing, and hope, and she had embraced it cautiously but wholeheartedly. Through each day of travel, every shared meal, and every quiet conversation, she had come to understand the power of kindness and consistency. In the following days, their bond continued to grow. The woman discovered that she could rely on him not only for safety but for guidance and support. She learned to navigate challenges more confidently, to face difficulties with a steady heart, and to trust her instincts while knowing that he was there to help if needed. The journey had taught her that trust was not a weakness, but a bridge to connection, strength, and resilience. One evening, as they set up camp near a quiet meadow, the woman turned to the cowboy with a sense of gratitude she could hardly express. She realized that he had offered her more than protection. He had given her a chance to heal, to see the world differently, and to believe in the goodness of people again. His presence had reminded her that even in a world that could feel harsh and unforgiving, there were moments of warmth, trust, and understanding. She reflected on her own transformation. The woman who had walked alone, desperate and fearful, was no longer the same. She had learned to trust, to hope, and to find joy in simple moments. She had discovered that strength came not only from self-reliance, but also from allowing oneself to accept help and kindness from others. And she had learned that even small gestures of compassion could change a person's life in profound ways. As the stars shone brightly above, she made a quiet promise to herself. She would carry this lesson forward, cherishing the gift of trust and kindness, and sharing it whenever she could. She would not forget the journey, the challenges, or the moments of fear, but she would also remember the hope, the calm, and the steady presence of the cowboy who had changed everything with 5 simple words. The next morning, as the sun rose and the world awoke, the woman felt a sense of readiness. She no longer feared the path ahead. She knew that challenges would come, but she felt equipped to face them with courage, resilience, and the knowledge that she was not alone. She had been given a rare gift, the chance to heal, to trust, and to embrace life with renewed hope. Their journey continued, but now it was different. It was no longer just about survival or reaching a destination. It was about growth, connection, and the quiet joy of companionship. Every step she took was lighter, every moment richer, and every day a chance to appreciate the strength she had regained and the trust she had earned. And so, as they walked together through open fields, along quiet trails, and past sparkling streams, the woman carried a new sense of purpose in her heart. She had been desperate and alone, but she had found something extraordinary, a reminder that kindness, trust, and compassion could transform even the loneliest life. She knew that the road ahead would still have hardships, but she no longer feared them. With hope in her heart and the cowboy by her side, she was ready to face whatever came next, confident in the knowledge that even the smallest gestures of care could change everything. In that journey, she had learned the most important lesson of all, that even in a world that can seem cold and indifferent, there are people capable of bringing light into the darkest corners, and sometimes, all it takes is 5 simple words, spoken with sincerity and kindness, to change a life forever.